Well, let's see. Can you all hear me? I'm coming through. That is good. That is good. I am so happy to be with you all this morning. This is wonderful. I'm so pleased to be able to mark the approach of Earth Day with you as we consider how we are called to care for Earth and each other in this moment. I have truly enjoyed creating this service with Pamela and Gail, and I thank all the contributors so much. I also want to thank Reverend Russ for sharing your pulpit with me. This we know, the earth does not belong to us. We belong to the earth. I remember that I belong to the earth each time I walk in my neighborhood. I've walked in the hilly suburbs of West Petaluma for 30 years now. I never get tired of it. The neighborhood includes old stately homes with manicured lawns, climbing roses and drought-resistant native plants. There's a park with an overgrown labyrinth. There's a cemetery, partly unkempt, full of trees and birds and memories. I am deeply connected to this place. I love seeing my human neighbors and the beyond human beings I live among. Now that I'm serving the Monterey UUs and living part-time in Carmel, I have also become attached to the land around the church building. I have come to love the Monterey pines, coast live oaks, the hawks and jays, the light of the setting sun setting the tops of trees aglow. Don't tell anyone, but I talk to the little sparrows every day. I've come to feel connected to the local ecosystem. I care about my relations on that land. I care about my interactions with the life that surrounds me. When Earth Day was conceived in 1970, we Earthlings were just starting to grapple with the human impacts on our environment. It was no longer possible to ignore the environmental degradation resulting from human industry and overuse. Kind of inspired or pushed by an oil spill off the coast of Santa Barbara, Senator Gaylord Nelson of Wisconsin initially planned a series of teach-ins at universities across the country in April of 1970. The idea caught on, and 20 million Americans participated in that first Earth Day. 20 million. This bipartisan support led to creation of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and several essential laws, the Occupational Safety and Health Act, the Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act. Superfund was established in 1980 to identify and clean up the most contaminated sites. Many pesticides and herbicides were regulated or banned. People and the environment through this process and over the years have become more protected than ever before. Unfortunately, the last few decades have also brought strong pushback from many quarters, including the petroleum and coal industries, from partisan politics, and from climate change deniers. Although the global response to the pandemic has brought some positive impacts on our environment, many are likely to be reversed when the pandemic ends. Global climate disruption, which we've been documenting for decades now, will continue. Even the current administration's proposal to reduce greenhouse gases by 50%, that is emissions by 50% by the year 2030, if achieved, may not be enough to stem the tide. These past few weeks, I've been grappling with the idea of a future in which global climate disruption will cause even more massive catastrophes than those we've seen already. As a geologist and one-time Antarctic researcher, I've been interested in the melting of glaciers and polar ice caps for decades. But the enormity of the loss of ice hit me in a new way when I read Dar Jamail's book, The End of Ice. Jamail describes global impacts in a way that is both journalistic and deeply personal. For Jamail, the glaciers are old friends. Their rapid melting brings up deep grief for him. He says, "Sadness visits me as everything I have learned about the planet fills my thoughts, and my heart cries out, why must we lose this too?" Jamail also investigated the impacts on forests from global climate disruption. Drought, insect infestations, and fires have taken a huge toll on forests everywhere. He learned that the increased incidence of wildfires in California have actually resulted in our forests emitting more greenhouse gases than they can absorb. We know the damage wrought by fires in our coastal hills, don't we? They have caused not only a loss of property, but also a loss of security on a deep level. Fires impact individuals, communities, and the very society and infrastructure of our lives. My town of Petaluma has been spared during the past 4 fire seasons, but I have many friends who lost their homes in Sonoma County. Some of them chose to rebuild or otherwise remain in the area, but others chose to move to far-flung parts of the country to escape the threat of wildfire altogether. Those of us who live here need to prepare now for the coming fire season and beyond. We need to make physical changes, definitely, but also invest in emotional and spiritual resilience to see us through whatever changes come. While I see the need for this level of preparation, it is rather deflating to look at the possibilities unflinchingly. I need some hope, and maybe you do too. Although some people see hope as a 4-letter word that can be used to deny reality, others believe that hope is essential in this work. For Joanna Macy, the Buddhist teacher and originator of the work that reconnects, hope is not a noun, but a verb. She says, hope is not something you have, it's something you do. Hope arises in action. She says that active hope is something you engage in for the sake of the world, to bring about a life-sustaining society. We may not get to see the results of our actions, but Macy points out that that's because we're too interconnected to see very far. But we will have a positive impact if we are motivated by compassion, motivated by love. So the question becomes, what do we do to instill hope? How do we work to take that active hope and let it generate more? Certainly, we can do all we can to lower our carbon footprint through the choices we can make about our lifestyles. To the extent possible, we can adjust our diets, purchases, water use, modes of transportation. We can also vote and encourage others to do the same. Possibly the best thing that UUs have done for the environment lately has been to encourage people across the country to get out to vote last November. So good job. We can also change our picture of nature from pristine wilderness to all the land we live on, whether urban, suburban, or rural. In that way, we stop privileging a notion of nature as a place without people or only accessible to some people. We can acknowledge and learn from the wisdom of people who have been displaced from their lands, often repeatedly during this country's history, yet who have established a kinship with the land wherever they are. Former UUA co-president, the Reverend Sophia Bentoncourt, spoke recently of the danger of believing that, quote, being in a more urbanized environment means you are not connected to the earth, as if the urban places aren't earthly. unquote. She says this belief colludes with the work to silence displaced and marginalized communities from having a voice and from having authority in environmental policies and debates and conversations. We can collaborate with and support and listen to the wisdom of people who are most impacted by climate change, namely those marginalized and frontline communities. Our UU Service Committee partners work with our UU Service Committee partners with marginalized communities around the world. Our UU Justice Ministries of California does the same in the state. And we too can respectfully strengthen those ties locally, making sure that all are prepared for the impacts of continued climate disruption. Finally, we can deepen our love of our own place, our community, and the land that is not ours, but that we are intimately connected to. We must approach this relationship with our neighbors, both human and more than human, with humility and gratitude, aware that we are merely strands in the web of life, aware that what we do to the web, we do to ourselves. This kind of love, coupled with active hope, helps us find the emotional and spiritual sustenance, the resilience, the radical optimism to keep moving forward together in gratitude. In The End of Ice, Jamail says, only by sharing an intimacy with the natural world can we begin to know, love, and care for her. Joanna Macy agrees. She says, taste the quality of love for this place. Taste the quality of love for this place. Even with its accompanying grief, we must never lose sight of the transformation that will come through us from just being aware of our sacred connection to this earth. Just be aware of the sacred connection to earth. I hope today you will take some time to appreciate the gifts of earth, the gift of this pretty planet. May you go forth today with clear-eyed grief for all that has been lost, but with gratitude for all that we have been given, with intention to help that healing occur. We are the ones, dear friends, who can bring about this transformation. So be it.